I'm a daily traveller, a road user on the R27 and also along Bauberg Road. I have seen an increase in the number of traffic enforcement cameras, or at least maybe not new. Some of them are refurbished and some of them actually work. This is what I've seen from speedsters ahead of me, and I will admit, and I will pay my fine when I get it. Yes, I have been caught by a flashing light, but not just in the Table View area. A couple of listeners said, they've also noticed some new speed cameras in the Milnerton area. And then last week there was also a post by Nicola Jow, who's the ward councillor for Ward 54 here in the Sea Point area, also proclaiming the yellow cameras are back. Alderman JP Smith is a MACO member for safety and security. Before I get to speed cameras, JP, I also just want to address the city and it's being part of the decision making of the cancellation of this year's Cape Town Marathon. Plenty of runners saying, we understand in the interest of safety, but maybe take us into the room from the city side and how that decision came about.
So it will always be largely, morning Lester, it will always be largely the events organizers' decision. They ultimately carry the liability. There's of course also liability for the city in the past when events have gone wrong. The city has also been confronted with litigation for damages claims by families. So I think we're very careful with these. Yeah. In this case, the gusts of wind at that stage, it could not be predicted whether it would reduce fast enough or adequately enough to ensure that the runners, as they were running past various bits of equipment and installations that have been set up and gantries along the way, that those would be safe, as some of those had come down. And you cannot then predict in the early hours of the morning which of those are safe, and get an engineer to go and look and say, well, I vouch for all of these. And we had a terrible incident with a slave run with a tree, and that was impossible to predict. Yeah. In this case, people would be able to say, well, there was very strong wind and you decided to go ahead. I think it could not have been easy for the events organizers because they're in the running for the Abbots World Marathons Majors. So a very important test event, qualifying event for that huge amount of logistics from the city that goes into it, hundreds of officers also involved along the route. So it could not have been an easy decision for them to take. I don't yet understand how the logistics from their side is going to play out in terms of follow-up events or reimbursement. We've been asked all these questions.
Not the city's ambit.
See what happens.
Not the city's ambit. You were just part of the Joint Operations Centre who collectively made that decision. Now, to the conversation that we had booked you for is that myself and a number of listeners have spotted new speed cameras in and around the city of Cape Town, very, very quietly, I must also add. JP, none of the usual press statements, and who are usually from the city, eh?
Well, I don't think we're really doing anything new. It's much of a muchness. We haven't really increased the number of cameras substantially. 5 years ago, there were 26 cameras. At the moment, with traffic volumes having increased significantly and the number of registered vehicles on our roads, we now have 77 cameras, and those are the speed and traffic light cameras. So it's probably not enough. We should probably have a significantly larger number of cameras if you compare us to other cities around the world. The problem, of course, is the bottleneck within the criminal justice system and the ability there to process not just the fines, which we do, but the ability to entertain representations in the municipal courts, as they're called. They're still magistrates' courts, but in the so-called municipal traffic courts. So that's the bottleneck that would limit the number of cameras around. On that particular route, there are 4 cameras. And the only thing really that has changed is that the cameras are of a slightly more modern design, so you're less likely to see a flash because the cameras use optic systems that don't require the flash enhancement. The infrared flash is not visible to the human eye.
JP, do cameras change driver behavior? There definitely may be the financial implication on them later, but does a camera change driver behavior? I would argue the greater representation of law enforcement officers maybe affects my behavior more than if there's a speed camera which may or may not be activated.
Yes, I would completely agree with you. Driver behavior is changed by a camera only in the immediate vicinity of the camera. So people will slow down for the camera and speed up immediately after the camera. And therefore, the cameras are placed at places where speed needs to be reduced, where you need to get the drivers to drive slower based on criteria that are set in terms of the prevalence of accidents, fatal or serious accidents in the location. Often also community organizations petitioning for cameras based on congestion and people standing in intersections and the prevalence of red light violations. But cameras, I don't think, do much. Also in part because the fine is received much later, so the connection between your bad behavior and the penalty or punishment is not immediate. And so I don't think that there is in as much as you impact on people's mindset, I don't think it is effective. The manual movement of speed cameras in terms of speed enforcement around the city, I believe, is more effective in that those locations are not predictable, and they would be most effective and reduce the loss of life greatest if they were concealed. But the prevailing position of the public is that they are very earnest for those cameras not to be concealed. You should, of course, never be speeding, and so you shouldn't be worried about where the cameras are. But as it is, a vast number of people spend a vast amount of energy fighting with us about whether the cameras are too concealed or not. And our own speed enforcement policy emphasizes the need for the camera to be visible in response to that prevailing public sentiment. But I don't think it aids the cause of road safety. And we are slowly but surely deploying more officers. What is, I think, of a substantial concern to us is moving violations and the contempt for intersections, traffic lights and stop streets. We see a lot of pedestrian accidents, and not a small number of those happen within intersections. So we have, over the last 7-8 months, stepped up our enforcement at intersections, and with the new neighborhood safety officers being deployed, we are also doing more at stop streets and traffic lights.
Question here, and I don't know if this is state secret, JP, but I guess many motorists kind of have figured out what is a speed camera and what is a red light enforcement camera. But the question here is, please do ask why cameras at most traffic lights are only activated by speed and not going through a red light.
No, they are dual cameras. Many of them are activated both by speeding and skipping the red light. So they are dual functional. And there are increasingly more effective AI cameras now available, for which we are currently waiting approval from the DPP. And if those are approved, it will assist with the vehicles driving on the shoulder of the road, yellow line driving, which irks many members of the public, myself included. And it will deal with, for instance, the test camera we have under the bridge on Hospital Bend, which will also then deal with vehicles driving over the solid line.
You've also been looking at and using cameras to determine whether people are wearing seatbelts or not. But Johan asks, please ask about, Con asks, is it legal for an officer to sit in his car and take a pic of a car driving over stop signs?
Yes, absolutely. Remember, the offence needs to be witnessed by the officer. So what we can't do, and which many members of the public want us to do, is to allow members of the public to submit offences. Johannesburg trialled that as an experiment. It was not successful. But the officer has to observe the offence being done. If it's a member of the public, that member of the public needs to be willing to appear in court and give an affidavit to that effect. But it is legal for the officer to either record with a camera the offences at a stop street or stop the vehicles thereafter. And then just on another point, there are obviously many more speed camera housings than there are cameras. So we rotate the cameras through those speed housings. The public are, I'm sure, well aware that not all the camera housings are occupied all of the time.
Very quickly, running out of time, JP, why not have cameras in all those housing units?
Because the point I made right in the beginning is that you overwhelm the portion of the criminal justice system that we don't control, where once we've given you a fine and you haven't paid the fine, you then have to appear in court. And the ability of the courts to entertain representations is limited to about 500 per court per day. That is a very small bottleneck. So we do need more courts, and it's something we continue to engage the NPA and the DOJ about.
Alderman JP Smith, really appreciate your time. Sorry, that's all we have time for.